Hello and welcome. I'm Spooky, and today I've got 3 creepy Reddit stories for you. If you're into this kind of stuff, please make sure to hit that subscribe button for more content like this in the future. Thank you. Knock Knock, written by user Inside Royal 7563. Never talk to strangers. If someone ever tries to take you, fight with everything you have. Scream as loud as you can. He'd never told her what to do if the man was too strong and there was no one to hear her screaming. Bang, bang, bang! The knocking on the door of Sabine's forest cabin startled her so much that the copy of Ink and Bone by Lisa Unger flew out of her hands and onto the floor across the room. After snapping out of the trance the horror book had her in, and taking a few breaths, she instinctively got up and walked over to greet the guest at the door. Sabine had grown up in a small town where everybody knew everybody. Crime was so rare that nobody bothered to lock their doors before bed or check who knocked on the door before opening it. As she gripped the door handle, Sabine realised she wasn't in her small town home. She was in her family's cabin in a dense forest in rural Washington, and the clock on the cabin wall read 9:17 p.m. No one should be knocking on her door. There was no civilization for miles. She didn't know what to do. She was alone in the middle of nowhere and still spooked from her book. Bang, bang, bang. "Hello, is anybody here?" said a man's voice from the other side of the door as he knocked again. Sabine responded hesitantly. "Who is it?" "I was." He paused for an unusual amount of time. "Hiking in these woods and got lost. Can I come in and use your telegraph?" Telegraph? This perplexed her, but she assumed he had just misspoken and meant telephone. Still, though, something about the whole situation was weird and unsettling. I don't think I'm comfortable with that." She tried to mask her nervousness as she continued. "I can give you directions to the road and the nearest gas station, though, if you'd like." "No, no, no, no." His voice began to get louder and he sounded frantic. "No, you need to let me in! You need to let me in!" He started pounding on the door and kept repeating that exact phrase repeatedly. Terrified now, Sabine quickly locked the door and started to go around, ensuring all the windows were closed and shutting the curtains while shouting, "Go away! I'm calling the police!" However, this didn't seem to faze him as he continued pounding on the door. She found out why when she picked up the landline and heard nothing but static. She tried her cell phone in vain, but knew there was no cell service for miles. "You need to let me in! You need to let me in!" The raving and pounding were getting louder and more violent. Sabine didn't know what to do. She was trapped in the cabin with no way to get help. Her father insisted she'd take one of his handguns in case a situation like this happened, but she refused, as holding a gun frightened her. But now she was regretting that decision. All she could do was grab the fireplace poker and sit in the corner of the cabin, hoping the intruder couldn't break through the locks. Sabine screamed in terror as she watched the man's fist go straight through the door and unlock it from the inside. The man that walked through the doorway was skinny and reminded her of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. He looked like he maybe could have been hiking, as he was wearing cargo shorts, an athletic tank top, and an outdoorsman's bucket hat. But he was also wearing sandals, which would be hell to hike in, and it had been pouring rain all day. But his clothes weren't even damp. The main thing she noticed, though, was his eyes. They were pitch black, with no pupils or irises, just 2 black marbles in his eye sockets. She continued to scream as the man walked toward her, cowering in the corner. With the way he was screaming and pounding on her door, Sabine subconsciously expected to see anger or fury on the visitor's face. Instead, he wore a plain, emotionless expression. She tried to swing the poker at him, but he caught it with his right hand and yanked it out of her grasp. His other hand, bleeding from going through the thick wooden door, grabbed her by the neck, lifted her off the ground, and started choking her. She tried with all her strength to break free from his grasp, but to no avail. As her breath and energy dissipated, Sabine gave up and just looked straight into the infinite voids that were his eyes. She became so entranced that she barely felt the fireplace poker plunge into her stomach. The man dropped her on the ground, with blood flowing out of her stomach into a pool and staining the woolen white sweater she was wearing. Still maintaining the same emotionless expression on his face, the man turned around and walked out the door into the forest. Hold Still, written by user Expensive Matter 770. The cashier's voice ran around the entire market, reverberating as it echoed off the walls. "It can only sense things which are moving, so hold still," said the cashier, inanimate but pointing outside where he seemed to have seen something out of the corner of his eye. I slowly avert my attention to the area where the cashier is pointing, expecting a vicious animal, but I do not see one. Instead, I see a monstrosity. It is tall, its skin is black, and its head has an appendage that seems to resemble a top hat. Its movements are jittery, shaky, and broken. Its eyes shine a bright white, piercing through the road adjacent to the market, which has now appeared to darken, adapting to the presence of the being. After a short moment, the lights turn off, a switch sound piercing through the total silence of the motionless market, which was once bustling. I look towards one of the light switches, seeing a man sheltered from the entity's view, holding down the switch with shaking hands. The expression of the cashier who shouted the message has darkened, his head turning slightly as footsteps seem to grow louder and louder, getting closer to me. I turn around once more and see the figure, almost touching me, appearing to be nearly twice my height, and it is staring straight down into my soul. Its eyes are oval-shaped, sharply fixated on me. "Psst," the cashier whispers to me, sounding irritated, veins almost popping out of his head, and sweat flowing like rivers down his ireful face. I slightly turn my head so that I am able to view both the entity and the cashier within the same range. It can't see. It can only detect movement, but it has to be traceable. What I'm saying is that you can sneak away, but you have to be slow and efficient. Don't trip, or you're done for. Follow my movements and move your feet in a way that slightly shifts your position. The cashier's voice is calm, almost as if he has dealt with this same issue before. However, it needs you to look away to kill, but too much of either component in a single swoop of motion will mean you will not survive. If you don't, please meet my Father in heaven, if there is one, and if he isn't in hell. He had an encounter with the exact same entity, and let's just say he wasn't lucky enough to have the same advice as you or I did. I have experience. I was there when he died, and I could tell from the entity's behaviour that it followed this pattern. Believe me, I'm a witness. So just keep looking at the entity and shuffle over to me while I call some people to take care of this anomaly once and for all, said the cashier. I follow the order carefully, making sure the entity stays in my field of vision while I shuffle over to the cashier, who is handling a phone blindly, typing in 811 instead of 911. "Sir, you're calling the wrong number. The number you are calling is not 911. If I needed to let you know, An abrupt voice sounds from the phone, making the creature slightly turn its head toward the area where the voice had come from. "Sir, are you a scam caller?" The voice grows louder, sounding angry, thinking that we are attempting to scam them, while the cashier has accidentally called the wrong number. The cashier drops the phone. "Oh my freaking God!" The cashier grunts, arousing even more attention from the creature. Low whines from customers arise, and it seems to catch the monster's attention. The first body falls as the monster shreds the person who broke the rules of stay still and keep looking. A flurry of more customers starts moving, trying to escape the scene, but it only makes the monster kill more people. Meanwhile, I am watching this happen. "Pick up the phone for gutter's sake." The cashier points with his index finger to the brick-resembling phone that has appeared at my feet. But the monster will kill me if I move, and I don't want to die," I say. The cashier scowls. "I thought that would be a perfect way to kill you." "What? You were helping me a second ago?" I say. "It doesn't matter what happens. I never get a break, and neither from this tyrannical creature. I've seen the boss simply scoff and then just package the human remains, advertise them as minced meat, and there, done with." The cashier lets out a low growl. The cashier pushes me, and I bump into a counter, disabling my movement as I just fall to the floor, paralysed. "Enjoy being minced meat. Please rate this a good market in the afterlife." Before I even realise it, the monster dashes toward my paralysed body. It stands over me, its appearance intimidating, white glowing eyes glinting as if they were stabbing holes into me. It attempts to speak, but it's a mix of unintelligible vowels and consonants jumbled together, its voice low and growling as it tries to bark out something remotely human. "Ugh, ugh." It raises its hand, claws extending, blood-stained, dripping. It slashes, turning my body into an unrecognisable mess of flesh and battered meat. The only thing I hear before this is a mix of the voice on the phone, the screams from other customers, the cashier chuckling as he smirks and everything goes black. "My stepmum has been poisoning me. I'll die before anyone believes me." Written by user Francine Gray. I'm writing this from the psychiatric ward, where she's gotten me locked up for insanity. My accusation of the beloved gardener and author Penelope was far more unbelievable than a student with no history of mental illness, including genetically, going suddenly loopy. Everyone gasped and pointed the finger of delusions at me. But I'm not schizophrenic, I've just seen the truth. Penelope Harrow has been putting deadly nightshade in my food, and the facts will get out there before I die. She came into my life a year ago, on the 21st of January 2024. My dad was swept off his feet and forgot to be just that, a dad. She always hated me, making snide remarks about how little I did for my dad, or how I should be out with friends more. My dad wore rose-tinted glasses, and the comments went over his head. The symptoms started soon after she moved in. I was getting sick constantly. My throat was always dry, and I had fevers almost weekly. I would get so hot that I'd hallucinate and become delirious. My grades started to slip, and with that so did my dream of studying at Oxford. I didn't even manage to attend the mocks that would give me my predicted grades. The doctors told me my future would have to wait for my health. Penelope was suddenly acting caring, bringing me meals, and making me eat them, even when I was vomiting. They'd make me better, she'd say. My body needed fuel. I did appreciate her efforts at first, however fake they may have been. I'm not a psychic, so I didn't immediately think the worst. I knew I didn't like her, though. My sickness left me ordered to be dressed, and with so little energy, YouTube was one of the only ways to cure my boredom. I enjoy history, so I was watching a video on medieval poisons, and one caught my eye: deadly nightshade. I froze as I saw the side effects: hallucinations, dry throat and mouth, constipation, and increased heart rate. All the things that I'd been suffering with for months, that the doctors couldn't diagnose. They were all right in front of me. I spent the whole of that day researching and was dead set on the culprit. I eased myself up to the bedroom window and looked into the garden that I hadn't been well enough to sit in for months. Garden peas and potatoes were growing, as well as carrots. I saw sunflowers and daisies scattering the grass, and tucked away behind the tomato-filled greenhouse, there they were. The nightshades, and my stepmother, who was looking around cautiously before plucking one from the stem. It was nearly dinner time. When she brought up my food, I refused it. "I know what you're doing to me." She forced a look of confusion, but I saw the twinge of fear in her dark eyes. "I'm not sure what you mean, honey. You're not well," she said patronizingly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing when that night she cried to my dad, "She attacked me. She was accusing me of poisoning her. She's not well." I was helpless when the next day the doctors took me away. I've been good, so I'm allowed an hour of communal time in the library each day, though my computer usage is monitored. I've made this Reddit account, and I hope they don't make me delete the post. I hope one of you believes me. If anyone sees this, spread the word. Francine Gray is innocent, and Penelope Harrow is a monster.